part, and at least 152 Palestinians were injured in clashes with Israeli riot police inside Al-Aqsa Mosque compound yesterday. And that was the latest of the outbreak in recent upsurge in violence that has raised fears of a get back to a wider conflict, hopefully not. I guess we have with us over the phone Mr. Ramzy Khouri, Palestinian political analyst. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you and to your viewers.
Thank you so much. And let me take your reading to the scene, or what you are witnessing in the Palestinian occupied territories.
We are witnessing a situation in which things could go south in a very, very fast way. Very unpromising, let me tell you, and I'll explain why. What just happened at Al-Aqsa Mosque resulted in the injury of 156 Palestinians. But this year, specifically, if we were to look at timing, the violence against Palestinians is ridiculous. For example, 47 Palestinians have been killed so far, just this year, just this period, before May. And May is very important, and I'll explain why in a minute. But we have 47 Palestinians who have been killed, many of them in cold blood, civilians on checkpoints, civilian women walking in the streets. 47, that's 5 times more than what has been killed by Israel during the same period of last year. Why is May important? Because in May, Israel tried to evacuate the inhabitants of Sheikh Jarrah in Jerusalem last year, which resulted in violence that also resulted in the death of more than 250 Palestinians. And the Palestinians are boiling. They are boiling, and they are boiling for the following reasons. They feel that they have been left alone by the international community, even by their Arab brethren who are voicing more and more support for Israel, if you like. And they do not see a light at the end of the tunnel, yet Israel is Judaizing the whole of the West Bank, and in a very rapid manner. Why do I say this? If we look at the numbers and figures that have been issued by the Israeli Ministry of Defense, Israel has given Palestinians the permit to build, 33 permits to build in the West Bank in the past 5 years. On the opposite end, Israel has given Jewish settlers 16,500 permits to build in the West Bank in the past 5 years. 33 to 16,500. This is basically what Israel is doing to the West Bank, while the world is watching the Palestinians try to struggle in peaceful means, and it's not working. It's not working. So the Palestinian youth, and most of them born, if not all, by the way, born after Oslo and Madrid, after the peace process supposedly started, these young men and women are frustrated. They don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, and they no longer believe that they can sit down and wait until Israel is willing to negotiate a peace agreement or a solution is imposed on Israel, because nobody seems to be willing to impose anything on Israel.
Let me hear, or let me ask you, this endless story, and how come that there is no ability to convince the Israelis that there is no peace, or they would see no peace, if they don't live in peace with the Palestinians, how come that negotiations so far did not revolve around this very particular issue, and what exactly is demanded from the international community in order to be able to move forward the Palestinian-Israeli cause?
All through the way, since the start of Oslo and Madrid, we've been seeing Israeli society shift to the right rather than shift to the left. And the more Israel feels secure that they have the backing of the United States of America, Europe will never be imposing any action against them. The whole world community is just watching and doing absolutely nothing. Israeli society feels very secure that they can get away with the Judaization of the whole of the West Bank. There is no need to erect two states. The Palestinians will have to continue to live as non-citizens on their own land, while Israel is expanding and Israel is taking control and making it absolutely impossible to achieve the two-state solution. The problem with this is that it's not really good for Israel. There are a lot of those who support Israel outside who have been trying to tell Israel, if there is no two-state solution and the Palestinians are not going to get their own state, then the Palestinians are going to come back and they are going to demand equal rights in the one state, equal rights. And the Palestinians are a majority on the land. And therefore, if it is a democratic state, with the Palestinians enjoying equal rights, then Israel is no longer going to be a Jewish state. These are the ones who support Israel in the West who are telling Israel this, and it's still not working. It's not working with Israeli politicians. The Israeli public continues to elect all of those who are derailing peace. And just now we have the two main players in the current Israeli government, the Prime Minister and his Foreign Minister, both of them coming out and saying that the army has a green light to conduct unrestricted violence or military action. Basically what they're saying is that the army has a green light to shoot and kill anybody in Palestine. And they think that it is a threat to the Palestinians, that the Palestinians have to be very good boys and just sit down and do absolutely nothing. But the Palestinians have been faced with this policy for the past so many years. There is nothing new with this. And the Palestinians are just not going to be slaves on their own land. And there is another element, ma'am, that we should also look at. Look at the double standards. The Palestinians are extremely frustrated. Look at what's going on in terms of how the West reacted to the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Yes.
And in Ukraine, suddenly, the whole West is endorsing armed resistance against the occupation. Yet, when the Palestinians want to conduct armed resistance, they are accused of being terrorists. And this double standard has really put a huge question mark on all of the democratic and human rights values that the West continues to dish out on the public sphere.
You're quite right.
Are so, yeah, absolutely. And this is so frustrating for the Palestinian people. Unfortunately, I cannot envisage anything but a rise in violence. The Palestinians are just not taking it anymore.
Yes.
And the Israelis are vicious in how they are dealing with the Palestinians in terms of their rights or in terms of trying to control them in a state of occupation.
Yes, unfortunately my time is out. I have to end it here. Mr. Khouri, Ramzy Khouri, Palestinian political answer, thank you so much for being with us. I guess Mr. Khouri here said the most important issue, which is if Israel really wants to live, then it has to choose between two options, two independent states, or a state where Palestinians have equal rights. And demographically, It's not in favor of the Israeli side, so things will have to move forward anyway, but that would bring us to the end of this episode. Until next Saturday with another important Arab file, it's goodbye.